for the Division I interview. Obviously, she didn't touch on this, but when you go, I wore a suit when I went to an interview. It didn't have to be a skirt. I wore a pantsuit, but I felt like I looked really professional and groomed and just looked the part. And I think that's important. We make the you go to the interview with the AD and the coaches and even a few players met with me at the Division I level to see how comfortable I was with them. And I think another, thing that really helped me get into the Division I level was that I played basketball and I was actually interviewing for a basketball position. So I could show them the knowledge I had, just like she said about the football position is if you can talk the talk a little bit, even though I never played football, I actually like watching, football on TV and stuff, but I think it's important to know scores and know what's happening and know that somebody just went to prison for life, stuff like that. Like you need to be able to talk the talk with the coaches at practice in between plays. And I think at football, when I did that at the junior college and then when I was helping a little bit at Rice is, they're like, oh, unfortunately they kind of look at you as one of the guys, but that's kind of the level that you have to get with them. And then they respect you a little bit more and understand, okay, she does know the positions and you're going to have to backpedal a lot, for defensive positions and stuff like that. So with rehab, it's very important that you know how to break down a certain spot in basketball or football or whatever and rehabilitate that compared to a quarterback, compared to a lineman or a basketball player, a guard compared to a post, stuff like that. So I think that's really important to be knowledgeable about all the sports and just have a general overall base of what's going on in the world. But, once again, the hard work always comes back and plays a big, big role. You never know who's watching and who's talking about you. And I've experienced that solely on my own, like a personal experience is my first summer I was with Rice. I did an internship, a full-time internship, unpaid, with the Houston Comets, and that was when they had a new owner, so it was kind of a crazy year. And then it was in the same athletic training room as the Houston Rockets, so they were in their off season, but the athletic trainers were there the whole time, and they were watching me. There was 3 athletic trainers with the Comets, and I said hi to them a lot and was friendly with them, but I worked hard. I didn't worry about talking to the Rockets athletic trainers. I did my job. I went on, and a few of the other ones were very worried about what the Rockets athletic trainers thought, and they were spending more time with them than they were the athletes. And so I didn't realize it made me shine a lot more when I was doing it. And then after my internship was done, I got invited to come back as as an athletic trainer for the Houston Rockets for 2 years, and it was unpaid as well. That's part of folks. That's part of it. You got to do a lot of unpaid internships. But he said, you weren't worried about the hoopla and the hoorah about meeting me and kissing my butt, stuff like that. You just worked and you got down to it and you did it. And I appreciate that. And I got to do an amazing experience for 2 years, just from people watching me and seeing my experience. So I don't know how off track I got, but that's something that if I could advise you to do, you never know who's watching and who's talking about you. And you always want it to be an amazing thing. So
take every opportunity you have
that's
and
right.
make the absolute best of those opportunities.
And I don't think there's very many females in the NBA either, so it was pretty amazing getting to tape Yao Ming or whatever. It was pretty cool. So.
Let me ask you guys another question. From a male clinician, and I worked with some female sports, every time I did an evaluation on one of my female athletes, I always asked them, do you want me to bring in a female athletic trainer? Would that make you more comfortable? Especially if, it was a high groin strain, or, if we were dealing something with the menstrual cycle, or it was something around the breast. Do you all feel like, as a female clinician, if you're evaluating a male, and Sonia, your whole population are males, do you feel obligated to bring in a male clinician, or has all that kind of washed away, right? You don't feel uncomfortable with any lines, and they don't feel uncomfortable with any lines being crossed. How do you all handle that?
I guess I can go first. I think kind of like you did, because we have the option, there's 2 male athletic trainers on staff, it's easy to give the player the option, like, oh, do you want John to check that out? I was like, I'm more than happy to do it, and I have in many cases. It's just, it's because you're professional about it, and you're a healthcare professional just doing your job, so it's not really a big deal. Kind of something that falls in line with that is like the locker room. I generally tend to stay out of the locker room if I don't need to go in there, but if there's an emergency, I believe I'm going to run in there and help out and tend to the emergency. So it's just, you just deal with it. But it's just like female doctors and seeing male patients and vice versa. You're just a healthcare professional doing your job.
Yeah, Chrissy and I were talking about that before the program started, that the struggle with there not being a lot of female locker rooms in the football stadium to change clothes, and you have to make sure that everyone's, decent before you go in at halftime, or not really, halftime's not that big a deal, but if they're going to the restroom, stuff like that. But I suppose males that work a female sport probably have the same issue with that. So it's kind of a hassle sometimes, but I don't know. What do you think, Chrissy?
Well, touching first on what he was asking about with the having a male clinician come in if you're working with a male, I had a while back where I was the only trainer on staff for the entire year. So I did a whole year by myself. And I remember not long after it turned into me being by myself, I had a young man that was brought in to me that the coach was concerned because he was bleeding on the backside of his shorts. And when I finally asked him what was going on, and the coach stood in there. He was a young man. I think he was a freshman at the time. The coach was standing in there, and I asked him what was going on. It turned out that he thought he had been bit on his butt. And so there was no other way to get around it. It had to be examined to determine what was going on. Right. But you're doing a job. You are a professional doing your job. If you maintain professionalism throughout the whole thing and don't show any discomfort yourself or show that you're uncomfortable or embarrassed in any way, then the other person who you're examining is not going to become uncomfortable or embarrassed. If you're confident in what you're doing, you're professional in what you're doing, it'll put the other person at ease as well. So I think given the option, you could always do that, but if you're professional in what you're doing, I don't think you have a whole lot to really worry about with that. There are some things where I'm just not going to go. If a male comes into me with a genital problem, I'm going to tell him to go see a doctor. Like, that's out of my scope. I don't need to deal with that. We'll have a discussion on things that you can look for and try to evaluate, but I don't need to evaluate that myself. But other things, high hamstrings, hip flexors, those are those sport injuries that I need to deal with, and I'll do them to the best of my ability. And if it gets to a point where it's too uncomfortable for even with somebody else in there, I'm going to send them off to a doctor to take it further. But what Don was saying about the whole locker room thing, that there are not a lot of female-friendly locker rooms. So it's not even about like going in at halftime, because everybody's dressed at the halftime of a football game. Yeah. But there are locker rooms that you walk into, and the urinals are right there when you walk in. There's no way around it. But I still have a job to do. And in high school, there's only two of us, and he may be taking care of something else, and I've got to go in there, and I've got student trainers that got to get water in there, and so we just work to the best of our ability to stay professional. But that is a huge problem as a female, is trying to do your job completely, because you do have barriers that are put up for you that you can't really cross. You can't go into the urinals. You can't, it's one of those really hard issues that you have to figure out solutions for.
All right, so Sonia, specifically talking about the locker room, is that an issue for you?
No, like I was saying, our locker room is set up across the hallway from the athletic training room, and actually there's a back stairwell that you can cut through the locker room to get to go upstairs instead of walking all the way up to the front door and then go up the front stairwell. So a lot of times, like, if there's nothing going on, I will cut through the locker room because but if there's a bunch of people changing and I know it's like a prime time for people to be changing, I'm going to walk around because I don't need to do that. But in the event of emergency, somebody's cramping, something happened, I'm going to go in there.
What about on the road?
So on the road, thank you. Some stadiums are better than others. Some have the athletic training rooms inside the locker rooms located right next to the shower area. So it's not an ideal location. But we work around it as well. There are curtains usually that you can slide over. But I think the NFL stadiums are probably a little bit farther along than some of the other older college stadiums. But there are still some really old NFL stadiums that are just not as easy to work with in terms of those logistics. I think the biggest problem that I find is just finding a a women's restroom that I can use outside the locker room that's not halfway around the stadium. But yeah, you find ways around it to still be able to get your job done.
Yeah, for a lot of times for the high school, I won't wear what I'm wearing to the game, like when we show up, because obviously I'm going to be setting up stuff and running around, and the beginning of football season is pretty hot and sweaty, but there's not always a lot of places for me to change. I do generally have to walk halfway around the stadium to, find a women's restroom, squeeze into a little stall and change in there, or even just to go find the restroom. And that's, at least for you, Sonia, I'm sure most of the NFL stadiums are a little bit farther along than most of the high school stadiums that are currently around here. But they're revamping them a little, which is nice, hopefully.
I have a question along the lines of travel arrangements. Sonia, Dawn, Chrissy, you're traveling with teams, you're on the road. When I was traveling with the teams, especially if I was with the female team, I had my own hotel room, right? Do you all get your own hotel rooms? How does that go? These are all things that I think young clinicians need to know. They need to be prepared for this aspect. Sonia, I'll start with you.
Yes, I do get my own hotel room. I guess that is something that comes up sometimes. Players will need something. So you do have to sometimes go to their room, but most of the time, if I can, I always try to be like, well, let's meet down in the team meal room or in the training room that they provided that the hotel made out of one of the rooms. So usually, if I can, we'll meet somewhere. But that is stuff that comes up. But again, as long as you're professional, there's no issues.
I'm fortunate right now. I work with the women's soccer teams, but I do get my own hotel room still, which is nice because I have treatments in there. But I do know a few of our other athletic trainers that are females. One is the men's tennis athletic trainer, and they have not taken her on several trips this year because they don't want to pay for the extra hotel room in California or wherever. And that's not fair to her. She's losing an experience, and it's not fair to the guys either, the athletes. They're not getting an athletic trainer. Right. And sure, there's only 8 of them for the golf team or the tennis team or whatever, but they're not getting the full experience that they should because of that female not having their own room. And it's $300 for 3 days. It's not that much to sacrifice to keep an athletic trainer on the road. So right. I've seen that a lot in Division I athletics, especially the smaller teams. Maybe not football or anything, but the smaller teams for sure.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think if you bring it up from a medical liability issue,
that's horrible.
Oh yeah,
yeah. And tennis expects the host athletic trainer to do all the work for you. Basically, is what happens, and that happens a lot.
For me, I'm gonna be weird and say this is actually one of the perks. Yeah, I do generally get my own room.
Yeah,
and that's one of the perks of being a female for once. And out of the several things that go against us, I have traveled. The way we do it is we'll have a district trainer go, if it's regional track or state track or that kind of stuff. Somebody who will cover all the athletes that are within your school district. And I'll get my own room for that. Our baseball team went to state 2 years in a row, and I got my own room for that. But my room was also the training room. So
right.
I would open the door, prop it open. The coaches knew where I was. The athletes knew where I was, and they would come in for treatments. I brought a stim machine and, got extra towels to make our homemade hot packs out of hot water and towels. And, you create it as you go. But I was happy to be a female. And they're like, well, you're a girl, and it's all guys. Bring you your own room. Okay. I'm okay with that.
So, right, I've got Nicole Casha sitting next to me. She's finishing up her first year in our Master of Athletic Training program. And so if the three of you were to give some nuggets to Nicole and to say, hey, look, I think, Sonia, how long have you been in the practice now?
As an athletic trainer?
Yeah.
Since 2007.
So you're looking at 8 years. Dawn, how long have you been in?
13.
So that's 21 years combined. Chrissy, how long have you been in?
10.
So that's 31 years, right? So over 3 decades of experience between the three of you. What are some nuggets that you're going to give to Nicole and say, look, these are some things that I wish I would have learned along the way, or these are some things that are going to help you along the way as a female going into a profession like this? And keep in mind, right, when all of us were coming out, I think I'm older than all of you, but when all of us were coming out, there weren't as many options that Nicole has now, right? The options that Nicole has are phenomenal, and I'm jealous of how many opportunities she's going to have. But as 3 females combined with over 30 years of experience, what are some nuggets you can give to her? Sonia?
I would say for any female in this setting, just don't be afraid to be direct. Don't be afraid that you're going to hurt anyone's feelings, but